Before we start, make sure you subscribe and like this video. My dying grandma made me something called a tomorrow quilt, and it's predicting my future. I finished it yesterday, she told me, her breath shallow, her voice weak. I wanted to finish it before things got worse. My grandma was dying. It wasn't unexpected. She was 91, and her health had been failing her for a year or so. We all knew it was a matter of time. Some of us hoped it had come sooner rather than later because she seemed to be in pain, especially in the last few weeks. Regardless of how bad she felt, my grandma still made time during the day to quilt. Quilting had been a large part of her life. Every family member had a quilt specially made for them, except for me, that is. However, she had told me last year, after her diagnosis, that she was finally going to make me one. "I haven't been ignoring you, little duck," she said softly. "She's called me little duck since I was born. She's the only person I allowed to call me that." I was waiting for the right time to start. "Nana, you don't have to do that," I said. "Focus on getting better." She laughed. "There is no getting better at 91, Amber. I've lived a good life. I've been blessed with a loving family. I couldn't have asked for more. I owe you a quilt, and it'll be unlike any I've ever made before. I promise I'll get it to you before the good Lord calls me home." We hugged, and I started crying. Even in her weakened state, she soothed me. The woman only knew grace. That was about a year ago. Now, with her body frail and her hands trembling, she handed me the quilt. My eyes got weepy, and I held her as tight as I could without hurting her. She whispered into my ear that she loved me and hoped I liked the blanket. I nodded and tried to speak, but the words drowned in the tears that came falling. I held her until my body ached. Her love radiated through me. "Promise me," she said between breaths, "that you'll keep it close." "I will," I finally choked out. She smiled. "Then I can rest easy." 2 days later, the Lord called her home. The following week was a whirlwind. I helped my mom plan a funeral, set up a wake, and go through Grandma's things. It was the most challenging week of my life. My mom and I were a mess for most of the time. That said, when the rubber met the road and we needed to be ready for the rest of the family, we turned down our sadness and handled our business. I like to think Nana would have appreciated our fortitude in those moments. During the service and wake, we met many of Nana's friends, and they all had such lovely things to say about her. I heard stories I'd never heard about her. It turns out she was a bit of a badass and a rebel in her younger days, not afraid to ruffle some feathers. The thought of Nana as a rogue thug made me smile. Even better than tales of her badassery, so many people showed us photos of the fantastic quilts my grandma had made for them over the years. The works were stunning. Most quilts you've probably seen follow a set pattern. Those can be amazing, but they aren't what my grandma made. Grandma did what's known as art quilts. That is, she didn't follow a specific pattern, but created little scenes in each quilt square. As you can imagine, each square of the quilt is a miniature painting made of cloth. It's basically a tapestry. When she finally handed me the quilt, she said it was the culmination of her life's work. She called it the Tomorrow Quilt, which was made specifically for me. I didn't doubt that, as the first panel on the quilt showed a picture of my birth. I recognized it because she was inspired by a photo my dad had taken in the delivery room. The following 2 panels in the top row were also recognizable from old photos. Me as a toddler eating a lemon, and me in kindergarten. Also, eating a lemon. What can I say? I learned lessons the hard way. In the chaos of my grandma's passing, I didn't have much time to look closely at the quote she had given me. I saw the first row of panels and they looked incredible. She must have finished those when she first got her diagnosis, because they looked as good as any previous quilt she had done before. As time wore on and she got sicker and more frail, each subsequent square was a little less crisp, a little less polished than they'd been before. The second row was more of me, graduating from elementary school, playing soccer in middle school, my 16th birthday party. As I said, these panels weren't as sharp as the top row, but were still better than most people could ever imagine producing. The following two rows were as far apart in quality as the earth is to the sun. The third row was degraded, and the figures were more or less advanced stick figures, but you could still make out what they represented. One was me graduating high school. The next panel was me finishing college. The last one was me at my grandma's funeral. That one struck me as odd and macabre. Grandma wasn't known for her dark sense of humor, or anything, so the panel stood out, still, since this was a blanket of essential moments in my life. I thought my grandma dying would rank in there. Weirder than that, though, was the final row of pictures. There wasn't any. Instead, it was just 3 white squares with nothing on them. She had told me she finished the blanket, but I assumed she must have sensed the end was coming sooner than she thought. Not having the time to finish correctly, Nana decided to just go with blank squares. Rather have a finished blanket with a few missing squares than an unfinished one with nothing. I didn't mind. I still treasured the quilt. About a week after my grandma died, I had a really strange day. It started before the sun even rose. I dreamed my grandma was sitting in my apartment, watching me sleep. In the dream, she was humming some tune I'd never heard before. In my dream, I woke up and we shared a look. I asked what she was doing there, and she said, "We're in the negative spaces." I asked her to repeat herself, but she just disintegrated like Peter Parker in Infinity War. I woke up confused, but got ready for my day. Nothing went according to plan. I walked out to discover my driver's side tire had been slashed and was flat as a pancake. 15 minutes later, I was on the road with my spare and a grumpy attitude. Work was the usual humdrum, which meant it was dull and aggravating in equal measure, except I had a surprise meeting with my boss at the end of the day. They mentioned I had taken off a few days recently and were worried it was a pattern. I reminded them about my grandma, and they backed off in that Weasley manager speak. But the message was clear: no more time to grieve. I left work and was supposed to meet a guy at a local coffee shop for a drink, but he bailed at the last minute, saying he got a bad vibe this morning, or something like that. Okay, it's not like we spent about a week talking to each other every night. God forbid that take precedence over your bad morning grumblies. I just chalked it up to him having a girlfriend and getting cold feet about an affair. Made me feel better. When I got home, I found my door slightly open. I hadn't noticed it from the car or on the walk up the drive. I was too busy horribly singing a pop song I had just heard on the radio. But when I saw the open door, I froze. Did I leave it open this morning in my dash to get to work on time? Or was someone inside? While I stood there, waiting for my brain to function correctly again, I saw a shadow move along my kitchen wall. I ran back to my car and locked the doors. I started my car, but I didn't drive away. I called the police and said someone was inside my house, but I stayed in my driveway to watch if they came out. The police said they'd send someone right over and I should stay away and keep safe. I stayed in my car until I saw the blue and red lights swirling behind me 10 minutes later, but I never left my driveway. I also never saw anyone leave through my front door either. The cops came and spoke with me briefly before drawing their guns and walking into my house. 5 or so minutes later, they walked out, their pistols now holstered. "No one is inside," the officer said. Nothing looked ransacked or anything. "Nothing? Don't sound disappointed," he joked. "Everything looks okay. No forced entry anywhere. We checked." "What about the shadow I saw?" "Mind was probably playing tricks on you," his partner said, passing by us to get into the car. "We see it all the time," the officer said. "You get keyed up thinking someone is near you, and you start misinterpreting things. Happens. I swear I saw a shadow." "Well, no one who owns the shadow is inside the house," he said with a shrug. "If you need anything else or think they're back, give 911 a call. If you want, we can swing by a little later to do a double check." I told them I would appreciate that, and they went on their merry way. I walked up to the house with a trepidation I had never felt before. To feel unsafe entering your own place is an unsettling feeling. Your home is supposed to be your safe space, a place where you don't have to worry. But on the shitty day to end all shitty days, I got to experience that too. The cops weren't lying. Nothing was out of place. All my windows were still closed and locked. It looked like how I left it in the morning. I took a seat at my bar and sighed. What the hell had I seen? I decided to do a once-over in every hidey hole I could think of inside and outside my home. Each time, I only found a plethora of spider eggs and nothing else. There were no hidden people. After that, I was confident that I was alone in the house. I felt my shoulders drop and some of the tension slide out of my body. When the adrenaline left my body, I suddenly felt exhausted. My body felt heavy. My arms hung like sides of beef hanging from a meat hook. I found myself making my way to my bed to crash down. As I did, I grabbed the quilt and pulled it over my body. That's when I noticed something that had been altered. One of the blank squares on the quilt was suddenly filled in with a picture. I nearly choked on the water I was drinking when I noticed it. I threw the blanket off me like it was cursed and watched it for a few minutes to ensure it didn't stop moving. But as it remained on the floor where I threw it, I felt okay to touch it again. The square's drawing was cruder than the last finished row of art, bordering on abstract. But if I squinted, I could make out something. It was almost a line drawing of a door slightly open in the jamb. On one side was a woman with her stick arm up to her face in shock. On the other side of the door was a tall figure, taller than the door even. It had claws for hands and red eyes. It was the only splash of color in the square, and it burned through you. It was hard not to connect the stitching to the day's events. I wasn't Inspector Clouseau or anything, but this was pretty obvious. What wasn't obvious was who would do this? Who breaks into my apartment and stitches on my quilt? It didn't make any sense. I called my friend Samantha and laid it all out for her. Sam was the first person I met when I moved here 6 months ago, and we clicked instantly. She has become my closest friend and the only person I know in this city. Something nobody tells you when you're growing up is how hard it is to make friends as an adult. I was terrible even in my peak friend-making years. Sam made that whole process easy. She was the only person I could trust enough to be honest about what was going on. She wouldn't judge me. I told her I was scared and didn't know what I was going to do. She offered to come by and stay over if I wanted to. I said yes 1,000 times and said I'd order us dinner. An hour later, she arrived just as the pizza man approached the door. I told her everything that was going on and showed her the quilt. She thought maybe something had attached itself to the quilt. She suggested I put it away somewhere and forget about it for a while. If I left it out, it was like I was inviting whatever to hang around. It made sense in a very why not sense. I was going to put it in my closet, but Sam said that might not be good enough. A wine-induced Google search later, we saw someone say something about putting demonic things in freezers to ward off spirits. It sounded like nonsense to me, but at the same time, I was out of rational ideas. I folded my new quilt, cleared space in my tiny freezer, and placed it next to a box of frozen French bread pizzas. It was ridiculous, and after we closed the freezer, we laughed, but it felt necessary. A hurdle my mind had to clear before I could feel a little normal again. It worked on some level. We returned to the pizza and a movie, and I forgot about the whole thing. For a while, Sam decided to stay. The wine had gotten on top of her, so I set up the couch. At around midnight, we said goodnight and fell asleep. I thought I might have trouble falling asleep, all things considered, but I drifted off to sleep without incident. Or so I thought. A few hours later, I heard the door to my room open. It woke me from another vivid dream, but as soon as my eyes fluttered open, I forgot every detail. I rolled over and saw Sam walking in. She looked wide awake. "What time is it?" I asked, still wiping away cobwebs. "Dude, the freezer door is open." That woke me up. I sat up and flipped on my side lamp. "What?" "The freezer door is open. I didn't open it." I got out of bed and made my way to the bedroom door. I peered out and saw the faded orange light from my freezer. "You didn't close the door?" "I wasn't setting foot in there until I got you. And even then," she trailed off. "Is the quilt still in there?" "I didn't see. I didn't want to see," she said quickly. When Sam was scared, she started to sound like she was coked up. "We should leave and go to my place. I'm sober." Seeing the freezer door open shoved me back in that direction with a quickness. "Let me go see," I said, opening my nightstand drawer and removing a knife. Sam looked at me quizzically. "That's a bread knife." "Shut up, it looks scary. Why not get a butcher knife?" "Is this a conversation you want to have at the moment?" She backed off. I opened my door wider and stepped out into the living room. Sam followed behind me like a baby duck following its mother. She held the back of my sleep shirt so tightly, it pulled the collar tight along my throat. I tapped her hand and she released, letting me breathe normally again. Sure enough, the freezer door was open. But that's not what stopped me in my tracks. The quilt was gone. I lowered the knife to my side. "Gather up all your stuff and let's get out of here," I said, my voice flat. "What's going on?" "I think something is here, but I don't know what." "What? Where?" "I don't know," I said. "It's a feeling, but it's strong." "Should we call the police?" "I don't think it's anything they can handle." "Fuck, dude," Sam said, gathering her things. "What's going on? Did you spit on a grave or something?" "I don't know," I said, "but we should go." "I'm ready," she said. "You lead the way." I stepped out of my room when I heard the office door down the hall unlatch. It slowly swung open. We froze, and I felt my hand grip the knife handle so hard that I was afraid I'd break it. We waited for some guy to come walking out of the room with a crazed look in his eyes and a weapon in his hand, but that wasn't the case. Instead, someone had draped the quilt over their body and walked out into the hallway. It looked like a child's cheap ghost costume came to life, only there was something off about it. I didn't see it at first until I heard Sam gasp. "They don't have legs," she said, pointing her shaking finger. That was it. The quilt wasn't draped over some guy's head. It was draped over something's head. The blanket fell to the floor as soon as Sam spoke those words into the world. As soon as it hit, all the lights in my house came on at once. The sudden reemergence of bright lights was temporarily blinding, and I raised my hand to cover my eyes. As I did, I saw the outline of a creature run back into my office and slammed the door. That's when I just yelled out, "Let's get the hell out of here." Sam and I made a mad dash for the front door. We both were screaming, so I didn't hear if anything was following us, but I didn't care at that point. I was moving so fast that Usain Bolt would ask me to slow it down a bit. We climbed into my car, and I fired up the engine. Seconds later, we rocketed down the street and out of my neighborhood. We were buzzing the rest of the night. Sleep wasn't going to happen, so we went to an all-night donut shop and picked a corner booth to lay low. We both were at a loss at what we had just experienced. The cloud's silver lining was that I wasn't crazy. I had seen a shadow. The rain in the cloud, though, was almost too horrible to speak out loud. Either my grandma had been a demon or knew a demon. Maybe, if not demonic, perhaps something worse. I shuddered to even imagine what that might be. Somehow, it was connected to my quilt. We threw a bunch of different ideas at the wall, but nothing stuck. We both called into work and decided to head back to my place. We waited until the sun was well in the sky, believing the rays would keep whatever at bay. It was nonsense, but what is faith if not belief in nonsense? While we were eager to get answers, we had a hard time getting going. We finally ran out of excuses and decided to head back over. I wanted to grab a crucifix, but we didn't have one. Thankfully, a nearby truck stop yielded one, and I put it in my front pocket like a sheriff holstering his weapon. The house was silent when we arrived. I walked in first, the cross held out in front of me like we were some sort of Van Helsing SWAT team breaching a vampire's lair. But, to our surprise, nothing was waiting on the other side of the door. Sam and I went through the house, inspecting it as we went along. Again, there was nothing out of place. We turned the corner where the quilt had been dropped. It was still there, beckoning me to check it out. Beyond it lay the still closed door of the office where the figure had retreated. I wanted to check the office, but needed to give the quilt a once-over first. Last time something weird happened, one of the blank squares transformed. I wondered if it happened again. Well, at least the ghost keeps it tidy in here, Sam said, trying to lighten the mood. Maybe I'll hire them to clean up once a month, if they're not, trying to kill me, I said, inching toward the quilt. Maybe you shouldn't touch that, Sam said. In case, I don't know, it's cursed. I already feel cursed. What's this going add? I picked up the quilt and examined the 2 remaining blank squares. One of them was now filled in. I showed Sam, who looked confused. Is that a sheep? It was, or kind of was. It was stitched, like a 5-year-old drew it in kindergarten, but you could make it out. However, this sheep had red eyes, like the guy in the other panel. 2 stick women were standing next to this thing. "Is that you and I?" I asked. "Why am I standing next to the sheep?" Sam asked, confirming my suspicions. I was the one who ran away first. "Nana," I said out loud, "are you here?" Not surprisingly, one responded. "I'm going to go into the office," I said. "You sure?" "No," I said, "but I'm going to go anyway." I walked down the hall with the cross in front of me. My hands shook, but I kept moving. I stopped in front of the door, sighed, and twisted the handle open. It creaked as it opened wide to reveal my office. "What the hell?" I said, dropping the cross. The room was immaculate, except for a piece of paper on the floor. There was a handwritten note scrawled across the page in shaky handwriting. It simply read, "We hide in the negative spaces." It was what my grandma had said in my dream. Below it was the drawing of a small duck. Sam came in and saw the note. "What does that mean?" "I think the ghost is my grandma," I said. "She said that to me in my dream the other night." "What does it mean?" "I don't know," I said. "I thought maybe that it was a hopeful message, like I'm never gone, but I'm just out of sight. But now I don't know." "Why is there a picture of a duck?" Sam asked. I ignored her. "You think it's a warning?" "Why would your grandma warn you?" "Maybe there's something I'm missing." "I don't know. The picture in the quilt shows the creature dressed as a sheep. A wolf in sheep's clothing. Have you pissed anyone off lately?" "I've been too sad to be angry. Maybe it's about an ex, or maybe grandma wasn't as nice as you thought." That stopped me. Everything I knew and heard about grandma was that she was a wonderful woman, but that doesn't mean it's the whole story of her life. I heard tales of her bad assery at the wake. Maybe part of that was devil worship. You always hear about people who die, and their families discover they were secret gamblers or had a franchise family in another town. Could grandma have been one of those people? No. No way. Why would she take it out on me? How would she write a note from beyond the grave? We're all just flinging shit at the wall at this point. Sam wasn't wrong, but something in my gut told me I was onto something. I didn't understand how grandma wrote notes or altered quilts, but I knew it was her. She was trying to tell me something, but I wasn't sure what. As I stood there pondering, a loud thump came from my bedroom. Sam and I turned around and glanced down the hallway. Another thump. This one was so violent, a photo fell off a nearby wall. "What's that?" Sam asked, fear creeping into her voice. "It doesn't sound happy." Another thump, louder and angrier than before. I took a step towards it, but Sam stopped me. "What are you doing?" "We can't be afraid," I said. "The hell we can't," she fired back. "I gotta see what it is. I can't get rid of it if I don't know what it is." "You can move," she said. "Or hell, stay with me for now. You don't need to mess with it." I took another step down my hall, and Sam grabbed my shoulder. "Hey, I'm serious here. I know, but this thing isn't going to go away if I don't do something." "Ugh, you're so stubborn," she said. "I'll go with you." I wasn't arguing. I didn't know what was stomping around in my room, but I was glad to have a wingman. We made our way down the hall in the opposite direction, watching my bedroom door like it was the series finale of my favorite show. If anything came out, we'd run. We didn't discuss this, I just knew. We were about halfway there when the door to my bedroom unlatched and creaked open. We froze, but didn't run. There was another thump against the wall, and another picture fell. This was one of Sam and me drinking cheladas at a block party right before the pandemic. It was shattered to pieces now. Samantha, a deep, low-toned, rolling voice said. It seemed to be coming from my bedroom. Sam and I looked at each other. Fear was splashed across her face. She opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. She took a step back, unsure of what to do. Why are you here, Samantha? What the hell? Sam said, her voice finally breaking through. What the hell is that? Why does it know my name? My bedroom door slammed shut, opened quickly, and slammed shut again. We both yelped and retreated into the office. I closed the door and looked at Sam. She was panicking. Hell, I was panicking, but I was trying to hold things together. We gotta call someone or something, she said. Who? What would we even look up to solve this? I asked. I don't know any priests, and the Ghostbusters aren't real. Is this your grandma? I don't think so. Then how did it know my name? There was a knock on the door. We didn't say anything, but the voice in the hallway did. Samantha, what are you hiding? I've got to. There was a boom from outside my window, and all the power blinked out. I looked over at Sam. She was gone. I frantically searched around the office, but didn't see a trace of her. Whatever had been calling for her had somehow taken her. I opened the office door and stared out into the hallway. There was nothing there, but the door to my bedroom was opened. It had been closed. That's when I heard Sam yelling from inside my room. She was freaking out and screaming for my help. I took off in a sprint, but the power turned off as I did. I slowed my pace, but was caught totally off guard when something jumped on me from the left side and sent me crashing to the floor. It took a second for me to realize it was the quilt. I tried, kicking it off, but it was holding me down, keeping me totally covered. I tried to scream, but found as soon as I opened my mouth, fabric rushed in to dampen the scream. I heard my bedroom door slam shut. Sam was screaming for help, and I couldn't move. I tried punching the quilt off me, but it felt like someone was lying on the top, pressing it down. I kicked and punched as best as I could, but nothing would budge. Then the house got completely silent. No more thumping, no more screaming, no more anything. It was like someone had muted my life. The quilt went slack. I kicked it off and rolled out from under it. I stood and ripped open my bedroom door. It was empty. Sam was nowhere to be seen. I felt tears stinging my eyes and then rolling down my cheeks. I started ransacking my room, trying to find any evidence of where she might have gone. My heart was beating so hard and fast that local DJs could sample it for an amazing drum and bass track. I stopped and stared at my messed up room. Sam was gone. No, I said, my mind reeling. I brought her into this. This is my fault. Then I heard her yell for help. It was coming back from the office. I ran around my bed, ripped open the door, and was ready to sprint down the hall, but stopped dead in my tracks. The quilt had been laid out before me. The last square had been filled in. It was another crude stick drawing, but what it showed was clear. It was me, lying on the ground outside the office door with X's on my eyes. Sam was on the other side of the office door, but she had those red, glowing eyes, and she was smiling. I glanced at the other 3 panels. Something in my house. Something lying to me. Something killing me. It clicked, and I felt a sickness rising in my throat. I realized, at that moment, 3 things. 1, my grandma was here. 2, There was also a malevolent force in my house. And 3, I wasn't sure I had ever actually gotten a hold of Sam. I felt my phone in my pocket, pulled it out, and dialed her number. 3 rings later, I heard her chipper voice on the other end. "Hey, what's going on? Are you at work?" "Yes." "Why?" I felt like I was going to throw up. "Did you come over the other night?" No, weirdo. I was out of town until this morning. Remember? I had to do that stupid work trip because Greg thought it would be great for team building. I hate Greg. He sucks," she said before adding, "Why?" The door to the office squeaked open. I heard Sam ask, "Why?" again, but my attention shifted to the widening door. You okay? You sound off." "What's my favorite flavor of soda?" I asked, looking for confirmation. "You don't drink soda," Sam said. "Are you sick or something?" "I'm not." Down the hall, I saw Sam's head peek around the office door. It was as clear, but it couldn't be because I was talking to her on the phone. I'm not. You need help. If you do, say something about a hair appointment." The Sam at the end of the hallway smiled and tried to wave me over. I didn't move. Even if I wanted to, my legs were out to lunch. "Come look at what I found in the office. I think it's from your grandma." "What's my favorite flavor of soda?" I yelled down the hallway. Phone Samantha was confused as all hell. She started rambling about something, but my attention was totally on the hallway Sam in front of me. "Dr. Pepper," hallway Sam said, "is now the time to play 1,000 questions." "I need a haircut," I whispered into the phone, my voice quivering. "Right now." The lights in the house flickered again and shut off. Hallway Sam's eyes started glowing red. "I'm on my way," Phone Sam said, and hung up. "You're gonna wanna see this," Hallway Sam said, her voice flat. The lights came back on, and I watched as Hallway Sam stepped out of the office and into the hallway. She stood with a demented smile twisted onto her face. The lights flickered off again. "It's about your grandma," Hallway Sam said, her voice deepening. "And it's really horrifying." What sounded like wet skin slapping against the ground filled the hallway. I watched as those glowing red eyes grew 2 feet higher than where they had been. The air was filled with a horrid stink that made me gag. "We're in the negative spaces," it said before letting out an ear-splitting scream and charging after me. I let out my own blood-curdling scream and tried to run, but the fear glued me to the floor. I raised my hands to defend myself, but knew it wouldn't do much. The light started to flicker like a strobe, and in the brief snatches of light, I could see Sam morph fully into this demented, oozing creature, charging at me. Each step altered her appearance, but those red, glowing eyes stayed true the whole time. Right as it was about to slam into me, the quilt shot up from the ground like someone had yanked it up from the ceiling. The creature ran into the blanket, got tangled up in it, and slammed into the wall next to me. The quilt had pinned down the beast, giving me time to escape. Grandma had come through. She was in the negative spaces too. The rattling wall finally snapped me out of my daze. I turned and sprinted out the front of my door and ran as fast as I could down the street. The only thing I had on me was my phone. I'd left everything else behind. I ran until my lungs breathed fire. I ran until my house was a distant memory. I ran until my legs finally gave out and collapsed into some guy's flower bed. I climbed out of the flower bed and called Sam again. She said she'd just pulled up to my house but saw the door open. She was worried something was wrong and was about to head in. I told her to stay in her car and come find me. She didn't argue. I quizzed her again as soon as she showed up, and once I felt confident it was her, I got into her car and broke down. I explained everything in between sobs, and no matter how insane it sounded, she didn't comment once. Just let me get it all out. When I was done, she hugged me and said, "I think it's safe to say you won the worst couple of days award." I started laughing. "But you had to deal with Greg, and you hate Greg." "Yeah, I really do," she said. "But he's never tried to lure me to hell. I'll give him credit for that." We started laughing and did for a few minutes. After we were done, we grabbed something to eat to discuss what I should do next. As we were about to leave, I saw an unknown number come up on my phone. I usually don't answer, but I felt compelled to do so. "Hello?" I said. There was nothing but static on the other end. "Hello?" I said again. "Who's calling?" Between the static, I could hear the faintest whisper of a voice coming through. It was hard to hear with the other noise, but for a moment it cleared, and I heard a voice I thought I'd never hear again. "You're safe. Now." "Who is this?" I said, my voice going gruff, trying to sound intimidating. "Who is it?" Sam asked. "Good. Bye, little duck." The line went dead. I didn't move, save for the tears that instantly filled my eyes and rolled down my cheeks. Sam asked if I was okay, but I couldn't find my voice. I simply nodded and slumped back in my seat. I whispered in the tiniest voice possible, "Goodbye, Nana."